Today, we've got a Destiny 2 exclusive you don't want to miss. Plus, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. We'll break down everything you need to know about the game everyone is streaming. The IGN Show, the longest running television show in history, and that's totally not true. I'm Naomi Cal, and my squad mates are William Haynes and James Duggan.
Coming up on today's show, we've got an IGN First, the story behind the Cold Hard Trace Rifle, one of the exotics you'll be wielding in Destiny 2.
Plus, we'll count down the top 10 worst rewards in games.
And later we'll review the long-awaited Tacoma, the new game from the creators of the indie smash hit Gone Home. Shame on you if you haven't played that one yet.
But first, it's time to talk about one of the most popular games online, the game everyone's streaming on Twitch, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
Glorious Battlegrounds. Despite being in early access, over 6 million copies have been sold, and that number's only going to increase when the game comes to Xbox One later this year.
Battlegrounds is funny, intense, scary, and no two games are alike. Here's everything that's been added to the breakout hit so far.
PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds released in early access in March of 2017, and since then it's received weekly patches and monthly content updates. The game will make its way to Xbox One before the year is out, but before that happens, here's a look at everything added to PUBG so far. When the game released into early access, the only weapon not seen in beta was the SKS, a semi-automatic DMR or designated marksman rifle that uses 7.62 ammo. This is one of 2 frequently used sniper rifles found outside of airdrops and is preferential to some due to its semi-automatic nature. Also added was the Deluxe Edition PlayerUnknown outfit. The Month 1 patch introduced several new additions to the game. First and foremost, the Vector submachine gun. Unlike most other SMGs, the Vector uses 45 ACP. While initially praised for its lightning-fast rate of fire, the Vector eventually fell out of favor due in part to its small 13-round magazine. Also included in Month 1 was a crossbow with a built-in holographic sight, which while silent and deadly, is only used by the desperate or insane. A 2x magnification scope, different colored dossiers, a remarkably quick motorcycle, and a ballistic mask were also added. Month 2 brought about another variant of the motorcycle with a sidecar, but the major addition was the VSS, a 9mm semi and fully automatic sniper rifle with an integrated scope and silencer. It sounds awesome on paper, but the horrendous bullet drop and poor damage make it only viable in the early game. PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds partnered with Twitch to give Prime members a special loot crate containing a Twitch-themed outfit. The Month 3 patch brought about weather conditions and destructible buildings, in addition to 2 weapons. The first is visually identifiable as a Glock C18, but is referred to in-game as the P18C, and is the only fully automatic pistol in the game. Also added was a brutally powerful 7.62 assault rifle called the Groza, which can only be found in airdrops. Finally, Month 4 brought about a few nifty animations and the Mark 14 EBR rifle, a DMR similar to the SKS, only better in every way. Since the EBR is a direct upgrade, it too can only be found in airdrops. Month 4 also saw changes to the out-of-game progression system, adding item rarity, 2 free-to-open loot cases, and 1 premium Gamescom crate, which costs $2.50 to open. That's it for now, but with Bluehole committed to monthly content drops, you can expect to see more weapons, vehicles, attachments, armor, and cosmetic items, as well as changes to the game coming in the months ahead.
While playing Bungie's hit shooter Destiny, you'll find lots of weapons on the battlefield, and honestly, a lot of them are kinda trash. What you really want are the exotics, the best of the best, the unique and the powerful. In this IGN First, the developers revealed the story behind one exotic that's coming to Destiny 2.
Cold Hard is an exotic weapon from the Almalon Foundry. It's a new technology they've developed for the Guardians defending the city. They figured out a way to not only create a liquid fuel ammo, but also use that liquid ammo to double as coolant inside the weapon.
When we started designing the aesthetics for the weapon, we started looking at what are the core principles of the Omlon Foundry itself, and how can we deviate in a bunch of strategic ways from those principles to make something that looks distinct and it lives up to the expectation of being an exotic.
We're calling it a trace rifle, and it fires a straight precision beam that players have to hold on a target for an extended amount of time. It's like the longer that you hold the laser on a target, the more damage you're going to do over time.
We start by building around something that clearly performs a very specific task. The weapon has to look like it makes sense that it does what it does. It is fairly minimalistic with the exception of like that beating heart in the center. That's what it's all about. And what that means is that when players will get it, they will instantly understand that there's a purpose to this thing in the center.
The design and art team had such an awesome concept and just a great idea out of the gate that all I had to do was like figure out the name and then we were golden. The tubes on the weapon actually look like chambers of the heart, so, you know, cold heart.
Building a straight projectile that is a beam that is persistent in the world and networked correctly in a game like Destiny is extremely complicated to do and something that we invested some time in.
People are gonna love Cold Heart because it takes skill to master it. To actually become super effective with it requires you to sort of, you know, to master control of the weapon and to sort of get a really good feeling of how it behaves in our sandbox.
We're definitely trying to push the ideas of player experience and what that can mean for an exotic weapon, and I think Cold Heart is a really good example of creating a new thing, which is a trace rifle. It's an exotic. There's going to be more experiences like that in Destiny 2.
Players who have pre-ordered will get their hands on the Cold Heart trace rifle.
But if you're not going to pre-order, don't worry, because the gun will become available to everybody starting on December 5th.
How do you think it's going to work in PvP? It looks like, you know, it's going to be a little different playing against players who are more erratic than NPCs.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Players are going to be moving all over the place. The name of the game with Cold Heart is keeping the trace on the enemy as long as you can. With the giant boss, that's really easy to do, and you get exponentially more damage the longer you hold it on there. But with players, they're moving all over the place. Like warlocks are blinking around, their shields going up, so I don't think it will be as effective in PvP, but time will tell.
Well, what is your favorite exotic from the first Destiny?
It has to be Thorn, because I'm a big fan of any weapon that deals damage over time.
I'm gonna have to give the cliche answer, which is Galahorn.
So we've got to take a quick break, but when we return, we're going to review Tacoma, a new game from the creators of Gone Home.
We'll also be counting down the top 10 worst rewards in video games, including, and this is not a joke, Golden Poop. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the IGN Show. One of our favorite games is Gone Home, an indie first-person mystery that we wouldn't dare spoil.
The developers are back with the equally mysterious Tacoma, and here's our review.
Witnessing 6 absent strangers' private moments aboard an empty space station might leave you feeling a little gross, in a good way. That mild discomfort from invading their intimate privacy is a testament to how well Tacoma's characters are written and acted. Throughout the story, you'll dig through these people's belongings and discover what happened when a dwindling oxygen supply forced the group to make rash decisions. Though it would be nice to have more time to get to know the crew better, Tacoma builds an intriguing and disturbing future world that's surprisingly well developed even within its short playtime of 3 to 4 hours. As you wander through the well-designed station, you'll see ghost-like augmented reality recordings that reveal what happened there. It's refreshing to be on an abandoned station without fretting over whether or not something is going to attack you. Instead, you get to take your time as you examine the station's futuristic objects, play basketball in zero gravity, and of course, watch the recordings. The entire station is monitored and recorded at all times with the AR system. It's a disturbing future surveillance state, but it makes things interesting. Developer Fulbright's vision of space travel is impressive, especially with its depiction of a grotesque evolution of capitalism. In 2088, your loyalty to a brand is worth money, and it can even shape your family's future. This feudalistic concept and other futuristic problems are explored throughout Tacoma. The AR recordings are the meat of Tacoma's storytelling. Upon finding and loading a recording, you're encouraged to follow the strange models of the crew members and listen to their conversations. Even though the crew is represented in such a peculiar fashion, it's not difficult to connect with the models because the voice actors put on an excellent emotional performance.
Odin, every freaking out. I'm freaking out.
Close your eyes.
I did already.
Witnessing each crew member's portion of a recording is made easy with the rewind, fast forward, and pause functions. The timeline was also helpful in showing when a crew member opened their AR desktop. Interacting with the desktops and notes found around the station is optional, but they're important resources for gathering more context about each crew member's issues, interests, and relationships. Adding some nuance to the storytelling, most of the AR recordings are presented out of chronological order. The most important, revealing scenes are of course at the end, but it's easy to piece together the timeline. The recordings found in crew members' quarters also provide good insight into how they spend their time alone. Fulbright has written a fascinating world, and it's a shame there isn't an opportunity to learn more about it. Generally though, Tacoma lets us get to know the crew pretty well. Tacoma successfully overcomes the challenge of featuring 8 characters and making them all interesting in a relatively short game. Using the AR recordings to learn about the exciting events on Tacoma is a unique way to see every side of a conversation. It would have been nice to have more time aboard and more events to give you a reason to explore more of the beautiful station, but the time spent in this fascinating, hypothetical future was great.
Let me ask, it's a pretty short game. Is there any replay value to it?
Much like Gone Home, it's an experience. Like, one time through is good enough for me. I was really thorough. Like, I found just pretty much everything.
Sure. So it tells a single story. This AR flashback core conceit is really interesting. Would you like to see it applied to just a different story, maybe on a different space station or even on a terrestrial setting? Do you think that'd be cool?
Oh, absolutely. I really hope Fulbright goes back to this system because it was believable in-game because it's a security measure, right? Like, they're being tracked through AR, their facial structures don't need to be followed. And I really liked how well it conveyed all the emotions anyway. Even though you're not seeing facial reactions, you are getting that body language, and the voice acting is excellent.
Stick with us because when we come back, we're going to count down top 10 worst rewards in video game history. Now it's time for some awesome rewards, actually 10 of them.
I don't think I'd really call them awesome or even great, especially when one of these games is viciously insulting you for 20 minutes.
You know what, you're right. This is part 1 of the top 10 worst rewards in video game history.
Many games feature bonus modes, secret endings, or unlockable power weapons as a reward for completing a campaign or demonstrating a mastery of a game's mechanics. Some, like Call of Duty World at War's Nach der Untoten, surpass all expectations and give players a whole new reason to keep playing. Others, well, they can't all be winners, can they? These are the worst rewards in video game history. The mission statement of the Pokemon games is gotta catch 'em all. And while we concede that any reward would have felt trivial in the context of such a lofty goal, Game Freak certainly could have done better than this. A reward screen with 2 sentences of compulsory text. A diploma is a diploma, but there's something about this one that just feels insignificant. If you were so inclined to capture this moment forever, you could of course print out the diploma on the Game Boy printer and carry it around with you wherever you went. The world of Skyrim is filled with eldritch dungeons and ancient mysteries, but no objects are more arbitrarily distributed and cruelly scattered than the stones of Baron Zaya. Tracking down all 24 requires venturing to virtually every corner of the map, pledging allegiance to multiple guilds, and vanquishing more than a few high-level foes. Which makes the reward for all this trouble perplexing. When the gems have finally been socketed into the crown of Baron Zaya, you'll be blessed with the Prowler's Profit, a passive effect, increasing your chances at finding additional gems from chests and other loot stashes. The problem with this apparently useful effect is that it isn't achievable by normal means until late into the game, at which point money is much less of a concern, and most of the chests that would benefit from the Prowler's Profit have already been opened. Combine a lethargic lizard with competent platforming and add a twisted sense of humor, and you've got Gex, the 1995 flagship title for the seldom-mentioned Panasonic 3DO. Each of Gex's eclectic levels are capped off with a bonus round. Perfect completion of each will result in the ability to play the game a second time in what's called Planet X. Defeat the final boss of Planet X, and you'll be treated to a 20-minute gauntlet of verbal abuse accented by the agonizing glow of television static. Expect such gems as, do you have a life or just play games all day? Just think of what you could have done today instead. You could have cut a hit grunge album. You could have seen the sun for once. Thanks, Gex. Rewarding players for completing a narrative campaign in a multiplayer-focused RPG like Destiny can be a bit of a conundrum. Give players too weak a weapon simply feels like a slap in the face. And in the original Destiny, that slap in the face looked like this, the Stranger's Rifle, which was hilariously underpowered relative to the player's probable light level at the time of campaign completion. But this minor mistake was rectified in a later patch, and the once rare quality Stranger's Rifle is now a legendary. Don't get us wrong, the journey that is collecting all 120 stars in Super Mario 64 is one of the all-time greatest in video games. At first, the prospect of a cannon opening up that can blast you onto the roof of Princess Peach's castle is rife with potential. Better yet, once you get up there, you're greeted by your old pal, Yoshi. Does that mean you get to ride the dino across the entirety of the Mushroom Kingdom? No, it doesn't. All that happens is Yoshi delivers a dumb message that gives you 100 lives, which are literally useless considering that you've done everything in the game. But let's not forget about the sparkles.
If you think it can't get worse, it can and will when we show you 5 through 1 later in the show. We'll be right back.
The IGN Show. You know what's a bummer? When you spend 2 hours watching a movie and it's not what you wanted it to be? And you know what's even worse than that? When you spend hundreds of hours playing a video game and the rewards just aren't enough. So today we have the top 5 worst rewards in video games, and I hope you didn't find these out the hard way.
From new age retro hippies to sentient piles of vomit, Earthbound is chock full of some of the weirdest things in video games. But perhaps none are stranger than the tiny cottage nestled along the western coast of Onett, mostly because it's the only piece of property in the game you can actually buy. The $7,500 price tag is insanely steep when you first stumble upon it, so one would assume that some amazing treasure resides inside. But once you finally fork over the cash, you realize that the place is in complete shambles. All you get is a strange magazine and a photo op to perfectly capture your shame and disappointment. Since Breath of the Wild's release, Korok seeds have become synonymous with the tedious task of gathering all 900. In the short term, collecting the seeds are immediately rewarding, but if for some reason the player becomes obsessed enough to track down all 900, the reward is satirical gold, a literal piece of Featured in the ending cutscene of Shadow of the Colossus, the secret garden near the top of the Shrine of Worship appeared to be a promising endgame goal. To survive the treacherous climb up the wall, players must complete a staggering 4 playthroughs and collect an enormity of lizards to max out Wander's stamina. But players who ascend to the secret garden are met only with a grove of fruit trees. These fruit permanently decrease Wander's health bar. To make things worse, players are forced to consume all the fruit in the secret garden to achieve the Cornucopia trophy. A permanent decrease in HP for so much effort feels like a slap in the face. What's inside the cube? This ponderous prospect amassed an audience of tens of thousands of players. After tapping at billions of cubes with a plethora of premium items, the grand prize was finally unearthed. What was inside was promised by acclaimed developer Peter Molyneux to be amazing and life-changing. A truly spectacular prize. The prize was in fact as incredible as Peter Molyneux himself. Winner Brian Henderson was promised fame in the form of digital godhood, fortune in the form of a revenue share, and the ability to intrinsically affect the rules by which 22can's next multiplayer game, Goddess, was played. But Brian, as of June 23, 2017, hasn't received a thing. In a quote from Molyneux, in terms of pure profit, actually Goddess has not quite even broke even. Whether Brian's revenue share will begin after this happens is unclear, but with no multiplayer in sight and Molyneux moved on to other projects, the prospects don't look good. The original EverQuest was a formative time for the MMO audience. The line between impossible and very difficult was open to interpretation. Invincible and indomitable, lore super heavyweight Carafern the Sleeper was designed to destroy those that awakened him and rampage across the virtual world of Norath, advancing the server to the next stage of its storyline. But long after other servers had tried and failed to defeat the Sleeper, The warring factions of a PvP realm called Ralos Zek banded together and did the unthinkable. 4 hours of tedious but terrifying combat resulted in the supposedly unbeatable Carafirm clinging onto life with a quarter of his HP. This was not Sony Online Entertainment's design, and as such, a server GM despawned the boss before it could be killed. The EverQuest player base was furious. Rather than relinquishing control of its narrative, Sony Online Entertainment had undone countless hours of player effort. Under intense criticism, the developers respawned the beast, which finally met its end at the hands of hundreds of skilled players, heralding the worst reward in video game history. Absolutely nothing. The unkillable super boss didn't drop any loot.
Man, that must have been a bummer. On a more positive note, the next episode of the IGN Show, we're counting down the top 10 RPGs of all time. Spoiler, they're all great.
Plus, we'll tell you everything you need to know about the latest Overwatch character review, Pyre, the new game from the developers of Bastion.
That's it for this episode. Now we're gonna go play all the video games we talked about on the show.
And as always, keep it locked to IGN.
Thanks for watching. All right, best anime character of all time.
Vegeta, definitely from Dragon Ball Z's